She was sent to marry a stranger who was expecting her beautiful sister. $30. That's what her father said she was worth. But what no one knew, not her father, not the man waiting in Wyoming, was that she had overheard a murder confession, and the killer was already hunting her. This is the story of the woman no one wanted, who became the woman one man would die to protect. Silas Blackwood stood on the porch of his cabin, blood running down his left arm in a slow, steady stream that dripped from his fingertips onto the weathered wood beneath his boots. The moon hung low over the Bighorn Mountains, casting silver light across the valley, illuminating the dust cloud that was still settling where the riders had disappeared into the darkness. Behind him, through the open door, he could hear Emma breathing. Not the panicked gasps of a woman who had just survived an attack. Something steadier, something that told him she was still standing. He turned to look at her. She stood near the table, a knife gripped in her right hand, her knuckles white around the handle. Her brown hair had come loose from its pins and hung in tangled waves around a face that was pale but set with determination. The woman he had met 7 days ago. The woman who had arrived on a stagecoach expecting rejection and found something neither of them had anticipated. His wife. Emma met his eyes. In the flickering lamplight he could see the fear she was fighting to control. But beneath that fear was something else, something that looked like steel. "He'll come back," she said. Her voice was steady, though her hands were not. "And next time he won't come alone." Silas looked back toward the darkness where Roar Madsen and his men had vanished. The deputy's threat still echoed in his mind, mixing with the ringing in his ears from the gunfire. "I know. You could hand me over to them." Emma's voice dropped lower. "End all of this." Silas turned fully to face her, his eyes pale as winter ice held hers with an intensity that seemed to cut through the darkness between them. "That's not going to happen." And in that moment, standing in a cabin that smelled of gunpowder and blood, with enemies circling and dawn still hours away, Emma understood something she had not fully grasped until now. This man, this scarred and silent mountain man who had built his life in isolation, had chosen her. Not because she was beautiful, not because she was the woman he had expected, but because she had shown up, told him the truth, and refused to break. This is how it all began, not with blood and gunfire, but with $30 and a crumpled piece of paper. 4 weeks earlier. The kitchen of the Thornton farmhouse in Kansas smelled like beans and failure. Emma Thornton stood with her back against the rough wooden counter, her calloused hands gripping a piece of paper so tightly that the edges crumpled beneath her fingers. Her father sat at the table counting money. $30 in worn bills spread across the scarred wood like an accusation. $30. Henry Thornton muttered, his fingers trembling as they moved from bill to bill. The trembling was not from emotion, it was from the whiskey that had become his constant companion since Emma's mother died 12 years ago. "That's what he sent. That's what you're worth." Emma stared at the advertisement in her hands. She had read it so many times in the past hour that the words were burned into her mind like a brand. Seeking a wife, strong, willing, honest, mountain ranch in Wyoming territory, will send passage money. And beneath the printed text in her sister's looping, elegant handwriting, Rosalie Thornton, age 22, golden-haired, accomplished in music and letters. But Rosalie's name had been crossed out, scratched through with a single angry line of fresh ink. Above it, in their father's cramped scrawl, was written, "Emma Thornton." "You can't be serious," Emma whispered. Henry did not look up from the money. "I'm as serious as a heart attack. Your sister made promises she doesn't intend to keep. Someone has to honor the arrangement." "Rosalie made those promises." Emma heard her own voice rising and fought to control it. "Rosalie wrote to this man for 4 months. Rosalie took his money. Rosalie is the one who should be standing in this kitchen explaining herself." "Rosalie is in town." Martha Thornton spoke from the corner where she sat with her sewing needle moving through fabric with mechanical precision. Emma's stepmother did not look up either. "With Robert Calloway. They're announcing their engagement on Sunday." The words landed like stones in Emma's chest. Robert Calloway, the banker's son, the catch of the county with his pressed suits and his family's money, and his easy smile that promised a life of comfort and respectability. Rosalie had been writing love letters to a stranger in Wyoming while simultaneously being courted by the wealthiest bachelor in 3 towns. And now that Robert had proposed, the stranger in Wyoming had become an inconvenience to be disposed of. "And I'm supposed to clean up her mess," Emma said flatly. "You're supposed to honor your family's word." Henry finally looked up, and Emma saw her father clearly in that moment. The bloodshot eyes, the broken veins across his nose, the weakness that had rotted him from the inside out ever since her mother's death, left him without an anchor. This man paid good money. He's expecting a Thornton bride. He'll get one. He's expecting Rosalie. He's expecting a wife. Henry shrugged, and the gesture carried a lifetime of disappointments accepted and responsibilities shirked. "What's the difference?" Emma stared at her father. The difference. What was the difference? The difference was Rosalie with her golden curls that caught the sunlight like spun honey. Rosalie with her china blue eyes and her tinkling laugh and her fingers that danced across piano keys like they were made for nothing else. Rosalie, who had never hauled water from a well or mucked a horse stall or gone to bed with hands so blistered they woke her in the night. And then there was Emma, 26 years old, brown hair that would not hold a curl no matter how long she heated the irons. Hands rough as saddle leather from years of doing the work that Rosalie was too delicate to touch. A face the sun had marked and the years had made plain. The sister men looked through to see the one standing behind her. Emma had never been courted, never been kissed, never had a man look at her with anything other than the mild acknowledgment one might give to a useful piece of furniture. At 26, she had accepted that this was her life. Cooking and cleaning and tending a farm that would never be hers, watching her sister collect suitors like flowers while she remained invisible. And now her father wanted to send her to marry a stranger who was expecting someone beautiful. "Where is Rosalie?" Emma asked quietly. "I told you, in town with the Calloway boy." "When does she come back?" Martha snipped a thread with her teeth. "She'll be home for supper. But there's nothing to discuss. Your father has made his decision. The stagecoach leaves Wednesday at dawn. You'll be on it. And if this man takes one look at me and sends me back—" Henry picked up the bottle of whiskey that was never far from his reach. "Then I reckon you'll have seen some country." He stood and walked out of the kitchen. The screen door banged shut behind him, and Emma listened to his uneven footsteps cross the porch and fade into silence. She stood alone in the kitchen, the crumpled advertisement still clutched in her hand. Martha's needle pushed through fabric with a soft, rhythmic sound. The clock ticked on the mantel. Outside, the summer heat pressed against the windows like a living thing. "Martha." Emma's voice was different now, harder, the voice of a woman who had nothing left to lose. "Did Rosalie ask for this? For me to go instead?" Martha's hands paused, just for a second. The briefest hesitation before the needle resumed its steady rhythm. Rosalie suggested it might be a kindness. A kindness to whom? Martha looked up, and for once her expression held something other than the careful indifference she usually wore like armor. "What's waiting for you here, Emma? Another 10 years of cooking and cleaning for a family that—" She stopped herself. "Say it. A family that can't afford to keep you." The words hung in the air between them. Martha set down her sewing and smoothed her apron with hands that had never been rough. "This man, this Silas Blackwood, he has 300 acres, horses, a real house. From what Rosalie says in his letters, it's more than you'll ever have in Kansas. More than you'll ever have anywhere. It's not mine." Emma's voice cracked despite her effort to keep it steady. "None of it is mine. It's Rosalie's. He's expecting Rosalie." "Then tell him the truth when you get there. Let him decide." Martha stood gathering her sewing into the basket beside her chair. "But Emma—" She paused at the doorway, her back to her stepdaughter. "Don't come back. Whatever happens, don't come back." The words landed like a fist to the chest. Emma stood alone in the kitchen, breathing through the ache that spread from her heart to her fingertips. Don't come back. Not even the pretense of a home to return to. She was being shipped west like livestock, and the gate was closing behind her. Rosalie came home at supper time flushed and pretty, avoiding Emma's eyes as she swept into the kitchen with the scent of rosewater trailing behind her. They sat around the table, the four of them, Henry, Martha, Rosalie, and Emma, eating beans and cornbread in a silence thick enough to choke on. Emma watched her sister butter her bread with delicate fingers that had never scrubbed a floor. "You could at least look at me," Emma said. Rosalie's knife paused against the bread. Her beautiful face arranged itself into an expression of innocent confusion that Emma had seen 1,000 times before. "I don't know what you want me to say. How about, 'I'm sorry for ruining a man's trust and sending my sister to clean up my mess'?" "Emma." Henry's voice carried a warning, the same warning he had used all their lives whenever Emma dared to challenge Rosalie's position as the favored daughter. "No." Emma set down her fork with a clatter that made Martha flinch. "I want to hear it from her. 4 months of letters, Rosalie. This man poured his heart out on paper. He sent money he probably couldn't spare. He built hopes on your words. And you're throwing all that away for Robert Calloway and his father's bank account." Rosalie's chin trembled. She was good at that. The trembling chin, the swimming eyes, the wounded look that made everyone rush to comfort her. "You don't understand. I can't live on some mountain in the middle of nowhere. I'd wither and die out there. So I should wither and die instead? You're different." Rosalie's voice dropped, taking on the tone of someone explaining something obvious to a slow child. "You're strong. You can handle anything. You always have." Emma stared at her sister. And there it was, the thing Rosalie would never say outright, but had always believed. Emma was made for hard things, ugly things, the kind of life pretty girls should not have to endure. "What did you tell him about yourself?" Emma asked. "In the letters." Rosalie shifted in her chair, a flash of discomfort crossing her perfect features. "Just things. That I like music and reading. That I'm good with people. I sent him that photograph, the one from Easter, where you can barely see my face because of the sun." "Did you tell him you're beautiful?" Rosalie flushed. He could see the photograph. "A photograph you can barely make out, so he doesn't really know what you look like." "I suppose not." Emma picked up her fork. She ate 3 more bites of cornbread, chewing slowly, while her family watched her with varying degrees of guilt and indifference. Then she pushed back from the table. "I'll go." Rosalie's relief was instant and shameless, breaking across her face like sunshine after rain. "Oh, Emma, thank you. I knew you would understand." "I'm not doing it for you." Emma looked at her sister with eyes that burned dry. She had cried too many tears over the years for the family that never loved her the way she deserved. She had none left. "I'm doing it because that man deserves someone who will show up. And I'm doing it because there's nothing left for me here. You made sure of that." She walked upstairs without looking back. That night, Emma sat on her narrow bed and read Silas Blackwood's letters by candlelight. Rosalie had left them on her dresser, tossed there carelessly. Some were still in their envelopes, others folded wrong as if she had skimmed them without interest and discarded them without thought. But the words inside those letters were not careless. They were not skimmed. His handwriting was careful, not elegant, not practiced, but deliberate, the hand of a man who weighed every word before setting it down. "Miss Thornton," the first letter began, "I am not good at this, writing to a woman I have never met, trying to sound like something worth choosing. But I will tell you true because I do not know any other way. I have a ranch at the foot of the Bighorn Mountains, 300 acres. I raise horses, catch wild mustangs, and break them for sale. It is hard work, and it is lonely work. Some days the only voice I hear is my own. I am 52 years old. I fought in the war, came west after because I could not stomach crowds anymore. The noise, the touching the way everyone pretended things were normal when nothing would ever be normal again. I built this place with my own hands. Every post, every beam. It is mine, and it is good, and it is not enough. A man needs more than walls and horses. A man needs someone to come home to." Emma turned the page, her throat tight with an emotion she could not name. "I will not lie and say I am easy. I have dark spells. The war left things in my head that will not quiet down. Some nights I wake up fighting, and I do not know where I am until the terror passes. But I am steady, and I am honest, and I will work myself to bone for anyone who will stand with me. If you are willing to try this life, I will send passage money. If you get here and decide it is not for you, I will put you on the next stagecoach home. No hard feelings. All I ask is honesty. I have had enough of lies to last 3 lifetimes. Emma pressed the letter against her chest, feeling the paper crinkle against the worn fabric of her dress. This man, this Silas Blackwood with his careful words and his lonely mountain. He had asked for one thing: honesty. And Rosalie had given him a performance. She read the rest of the letters one by one as the candle burned low and the night deepened around her. He wrote about summer storms that split the sky open like wounds in the heavens, about a wild white stallion he had been tracking for 2 years, a ghost horse that ran the high ridges and would not be caught, about the way dawn broke over the mountains like God was cracking the world open fresh every morning, offering another chance to those who had the courage to take it. And he wrote about what he wanted in a wife: not beauty, not music, not social graces. Someone who will not break when things get hard. Someone who sees work as a gift, not a punishment. Someone real. Emma folded the letters and placed them in her trunk. Then she blew out the candle and lay in the dark, listening to Rosalie laughing downstairs. Her sister was already celebrating her escape, already planning her wedding to Robert Calloway, already forgetting that she had sold another woman's future for 30 pieces of silver. Wednesday morning, Emma would tell Silas Blackwood the truth the moment she saw him, and whatever he decided, at least one honest word would have passed between them. She did not know it then, but that honesty would save her life. What Emma also did not know was that 3 weeks earlier she had already set her fate in motion. It had happened on a Tuesday night. Her father had sent her to fetch his medicine from the apothecary, but the shop was closed. She had waited in the alley beside the saloon, hoping the pharmacist would return. That was when she heard the voices through the thin wall. 2 men speaking low but clear enough to understand. One voice she did not recognize. The other belonged to a man who introduced himself as Roar Madsen, a deputy from Wyoming Territory. "Voss does not want witnesses," the stranger had said. "The man in Cheyenne knew too much. He talked to the wrong people." "Then we solved the problem," Madsen replied. "Same as always. No body, no crime." Emma had frozen in that alley, barely breathing, until the men finished their whiskey and left. She had not understood what she heard. Not then, but she had seen Madsen's face as he walked past her in the moonlight, and he had seen hers. 3 weeks later, standing in her father's kitchen with $30 on the table, Emma had no idea that the deputy was already looking for her, that her father's sudden eagerness to send her west was not just about honoring a promise. Someone had paid Henry Thornton to make his daughter disappear, and Emma was riding straight toward the man who wanted her dead. The stagecoach ride took 5 days. 5 days of dust that worked its way into every fold of her clothing and every pore of her skin. 5 days of heat that pressed down like a physical weight, stealing the moisture from her lips and the strength from her limbs. 5 days of bad food and worse company of cramped seats and rutted roads and the endless rhythmic swaying that made sleep impossible and wakefulness exhausting. Emma sat between a whiskey drummer heading to Montana and an elderly preacher's wife who talked without ceasing about her 7 grandchildren, their various accomplishments, and the moral failings of modern young people who did not appreciate the value of hard work and church-going. Emma heard almost none of it. She watched Kansas flatten into Nebraska, the familiar farmland giving way to rolling prairie that stretched to the horizon in every direction. She watched Nebraska roll into Wyoming Territory, the land getting bigger, wilder, emptier with every mile. The sky stretched so wide it hurt to look at a dome of blue so vast that it made her feel small in a way that was both terrifying and strangely liberating. And somewhere under all that sky, a man was waiting for a woman who was not coming. What would she say to him? She had rehearsed 100 times. The words lined up in her mind like soldiers, direct, honest, unflinching. She would tell him about Rosalie. About the banker's son, about her father's scheme. She would give him the truth he had asked for, and she would accept whatever judgment he rendered. But what then? If he sent her back, what was waiting for her in Kansas? "Don't come back," Martha had said. "Whatever happens, don't come back." 26 years of cooking and cleaning and being invisible. 26 years of watching her sister collect everything Emma was denied. And at the end of it, not even the pretense of a home to return to. Emma pressed her forehead against the stagecoach window, watching the prairie grass ripple in the wind like waves on an endless ocean. For the first time in her life, she had nothing behind her and nothing ahead of her. She was suspended between two worlds belonging to neither. It should have been terrifying. Instead, she felt something she had not felt in years. Not hope exactly, something smaller, something stubborn. A beginning. The stagecoach pulled into the station at Buffalo on a Tuesday afternoon so hot that the air shimmered above the dirt road like water on a mirage. Emma climbed down on legs stiff from 5 days of sitting, her traveling dress soaked through with sweat, her hair escaping its pins in every direction. She clutched her trunk handle and scanned the platform. He had described himself simply in his letters. Tall, dark hair. I will wear my good hat. Half the men in Wyoming wore good hats. Miss Thornton. She turned toward the voice, and the air left her lungs. He was tall, well over 6 feet, lean as rawhide, with shoulders that looked like they had been cut from mountain rock. Dark hair showed under a black hat streaked with gray at the temples that spoke of the years he had survived. His face was all hard angles, jaw, cheekbones, the straight line of his nose. A scar ran along his left forearm, visible below his rolled sleeve, pale against skin that had been weathered by decades of sun and wind. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold, blue-gray, pale as winter ice, and they were looking at her with a confusion he could not hide. This was Silas Blackwood, the mountain man of the Big Horn, the man who had built an empire of solitude and reached out across 1,000 miles for someone to share it with. And he was seeing brown-haired, sun-weathered, plain Emma Thornton instead of the golden girl in the photograph. His eyes moved over her face, down to her work, roughened hands, back to her face. Something flickered in those pale depths. Disappointment, maybe, or just recalculation. Then he turned around and walked away. Emma stood on the platform trunk at her feet, dust settling on her shoulders, watching the back of his black hat move through the crowd. Her chest cracked open. She had expected rejection. She had prepared for it, even rehearsed what she would say. But she had not prepared for silence, for him to just walk away without a word. She gripped her trunk handle tighter. Fine. She would find the next stagecoach back to Kansas. And then what? Don't come back. Martha's voice echoed in her mind, cold and final. Emma sank down onto her trunk. The platform was emptying around her. The stagecoach driver was unhitching his horses. The Wyoming sun beat down on her head like a punishment, and she had nowhere in the world to go. 5 minutes passed. 10. The station clerk gave her a pitying look from the doorway, the kind of look people gave to stray dogs and lost children. Emma ignored him. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her spine straight. She would not cry. She did not cry easy. She had learned long ago that tears were a luxury she could not afford, that no one would come running when she wept, that the only person who would pick her up was herself. Then she heard it, the creak of wagon wheels, the clop of heavy hooves. Silas Blackwood pulled up in front of the platform, driving a weathered wagon hitched to 2 big draft horses. He set the brake, climbed down, and walked toward her. He picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing, carried it to the wagon, set it in the back. Then he turned to her. His face gave away nothing, stone and shadow. Wagon was at the livery, he said. Could not bring it to the platform. Emma blinked. The world seemed to shift around her reality, rearranging itself into a shape she had not anticipated. You were getting the wagon. What did you think I was doing? I thought you were leaving. I thought you saw me and— Saw what? Emma swallowed, forcing the words out through a throat that felt like sandpaper. Saw that I was not Rosalie. Silas studied her for a long moment. That ice-blue gaze, steady and unreadable, weighing her like a man might weigh a horse before deciding whether it was worth the price. "I know you are not Rosalie," he said. "I could see that from 50 feet. He extended his hand to help her up onto the wagon bench. His palm was calloused hard warm from the sun. Emma took it, climbed up onto the seat and released his fingers. He walked around to the driver's side, climbed up and released the brake. The horses moved forward. The station fell behind. They drove in silence through the town, past the saloon, the general store, the church with its crooked steeple. People stared. A few men tipped their hats. Emma kept her spine straight and her eyes forward. A mile out of town, the road narrowed to a track cutting through grassland that stretched to the mountains. The bighorns rose against the sky, massive and blue-gray, their peaks still holding snow even in the summer heat. "You going to tell me?" Silas asked. His voice was low, rough, like gravel in a creek bed, the voice of a man who did not waste words. Emma had rehearsed this for 5 days. She did not soften it. "Rosalie changed her mind. She is marrying a banker's son back in Kansas. My father sent me instead to honor the arrangement. I told them it was wrong. I told them you deserved the truth. Nobody cared." She took a breath, feeling the hot Wyoming air fill her lungs. "I am Emma Thornton, 26 years old. I can cook, keep house 10 stock, and handle horses. I am not pretty. I am not musical. I cannot write letters that make a man dream. But I do not lie, and I will not start now." She gripped her hands in her lap, knuckles white. "If you want to send me back, I understand, but I should tell you. I have nowhere to go back to." The wagon wheels creaked. The horses plodded on. Silas did not speak for so long that Emma's heart began to hammer with a new kind of fear. Not rejection. Limbo. The terrible space between yes and no. "You read my letters," he said finally. "Rosalie left them. I read every one." "Then you know what I asked for." Emma nodded. "Someone honest. Someone who will not break." Silas looked at her for the first time since they had left town. Those pale eyes, searching, serious, carrying a weight she could not name. "You came 5 days on a stagecoach to marry a stranger who was not even writing to you. You told me the truth when lying would have been easier. And you sat on that trunk in the sun for 10 minutes thinking I had left you, and you did not cry." Emma's jaw tightened. "I do not cry easy." "I can see that." He turned back to the road. The mountains grew closer. "There is a guest room," he said. "You will sleep there tonight. Tomorrow I will show you the ranch. You can decide if this life suits you, and I will decide if you suit this life. And if we don't suit, then I will put you on the next stagecoach to wherever you want to go. I gave my word on that in my letters, and I keep my word." He paused and something hardened in his voice. "Even if the woman I gave it to did not keep hers." Emma sat beside him as the wagon climbed toward the mountains, the summer heat pressing down the vast Wyoming sky stretching overhead. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if this hard, quiet man would choose her or send her away. But she was here, and she had told the truth. And somewhere in the silence between them she felt the first crack in the wall she had built around her heart. Not hope, not yet, but the space where hope might grow. What Emma did not know, what she could not possibly have known, was that in Buffalo a man in a deputy's badge was asking questions. Roar Madsen had seen her on the wagon, had noticed the brown hair and the work-roughened hands, and had recognized the face that had haunted him for 3 weeks. The face of the woman who had overheard his conversation in a Kansas saloon. The face of the only witness who could connect him to Harland Voss. The face of the woman who had to die. But that danger was still hours away. For now, Emma Thornton rode toward the mountains with a stranger who might become her husband, watching the world she knew disappear behind her, and something new, something terrifying and beautiful, rise up to take its place. The wagon stopped in front of a cabin that sat at the base of the mountains, like it had grown there, as natural and weathered as the rocks that surrounded it. Silas climbed down without a word. Emma sat on the bench, her hands still folded in her lap, waiting. He walked around to her side and extended his hand. She took it, stepped down, released his fingers. "Guest room is upstairs," he said. "Second door, I will bring your trunk." I can carry my own trunk." Silas looked at her. Something moved behind those pale eyes. Not amusement exactly, but close. "I said I would bring it." He hauled the trunk from the wagon bed and walked inside. Emma followed, stepping through the front door into a house that smelled like wood smoke and solitude. She did not look around. She did not need to. She could feel the emptiness, the kind that builds up in a place where only one person breathes. The silence here was different from the silence of the prairie. It was older, heavier, the silence of a man who had stopped expecting anyone to fill it. Silas set her trunk at the top of the stairs. "Kitchen has coffee and some biscuits from yesterday. I need to check the horses." "Mr. Blackwood." He stopped his hand on the door frame. "Thank you," Emma said, "for not leaving me at the station. I told you I was getting the wagon." "I know what you told me." Their eyes held for a beat. Something passed between them, something neither of them could name. Then Silas pulled his hat lower and walked out. Emma stood in the hallway listening to his boots cross the porch, the creak of the barn door. She pressed her hands flat against her thighs to stop the trembling. Then she went to the kitchen. The stove was cold. The biscuits he had mentioned were hard as stones. The coffee pot held yesterday's dregs. Emma rolled up her sleeves. By the time the sky turned orange, she had the stove lit, fresh coffee-brewed biscuits in the oven, and a pot of beans with salt pork simmering from supplies she had found in the pantry. She had scrubbed the kitchen table, swept the floor, and organized his haphazard shelves without thinking about it. Her hands knew this work. Her hands had always known this work. It was the one thing she was good for, the one thing that had kept her useful when everything else about her was deemed inadequate. The door opened. Silas stood there, hat in hand, and stopped. He looked at the table, at the stove, at Emma, who stood with a dish towel over her shoulder and flour on her cheek. "You did not have to do this," he said. "I know. I was not testing you. I know that too." Emma poured coffee into a tin cup and set it on the table. "Sit down." Silas sat. He wrapped his hands around the cup and drank, his eyes watching her over the rim with an expression she could not read. Emma served the beans, set out the biscuits, and sat across from him. They ate in silence. Not the frozen silence of strangers. Something different. The quiet of two people who did not need noise to fill a room. "These are good," Silas said, reaching for a second biscuit. "They are just biscuits." "They are good biscuits." Emma felt something warm crack open in her chest, something that had been locked away for so long she had forgotten it existed. She pushed it down. "Do not be a fool," she told herself. "One meal does not mean anything." "I will wash up," she said, standing. "You should rest, Emma." Her name in his mouth, low, rough, like he was trying it out for the first time. "Tomorrow I will show you the ranch, all of it. Then we talk." "All right. All right." He stood, carried his plate to the basin, and walked out. At the doorway he paused. Biscuits were real good. Then he was gone. Emma washed the dishes with shaking hands and a strange, dangerous flutter beneath her ribs. She told herself it meant nothing. She told herself not to hope. But when she climbed the stairs to the guest room and lay down in a bed that was not her own, in a house that smelled like wood smoke and loneliness, she found herself thinking about his letters, about the man who had written them, someone who will not break when things get hard. She had been breaking her whole life, piece by piece, year by year, worn down by indifference and invisibility, until there was almost nothing left. But almost was not nothing. And tomorrow she would show him what she was made of. She woke before dawn. Habit. 26 years of rising in the dark did not break because the house was different. She dressed in her work dress, the brown calico she had mended so many times that the patches had patches, and went downstairs. Silas was already gone. The coffee pot was warm, so he had not been gone long. Emma drank a cup standing up, then walked outside. The heat hit her like a wall. Wyoming summer dry, fierce, the sun already mean at 5 in the morning. She could hear horses somewhere behind the barn, and she followed the sound. The corral held 6 horses. 5 stood calm, ears flicking at flies. The 6th paced the far fence like a caged wolf, a stallion. white as bone with a mane that tangled wild past his neck and eyes that burned black with fury. He saw Emma and lunged at the fence, teeth bared, hooves striking the rails. Emma did not flinch. She had grown up with horses, mean ones, scared ones, broken ones. She stood still and let the stallion rage, and in those wild black eyes she saw something that others might have missed. Not fury, fear. "Everything that fights that hard is afraid," she whispered to herself. "It does not know what you want from it, so it fights." She stood there for a long time watching the white stallion, thinking about the man who owned it. She wondered if Silas was the same, fighting because he was afraid, building walls because he had been hurt, pushing people away because letting them close was too dangerous. She did not know it yet, but she would find out, and when she did, everything would change. "He'll kill you if you go in there." Emma turned toward the voice. A young man leaned against the barn wall, arms crossed, grinning wide under a dusty hat. Sandy hair, easy smile, maybe 24 years old. He pushed off the wall and walked toward her with the loose-limbed confidence of someone who had never been invisible a day in his life. "Wyatt Cole," he said, tipping his hat. "I work for Silas sometimes. You must be the bride." "Emma Thornton, and I am not the bride yet." Wyatt's grin widened. "Well, Miss Thornton, you are the first woman who has stood that close to Phantom without screaming. Most men will not get within 10 feet. Phantom, that is what Silas calls him. White stallion, runs the high ridges, been wild his whole life." Wyatt shook his head, his smile fading into something like respect. "Silas spent 2 years tracking him, finally caught him last month, but nobody can ride him, nobody can touch him. Silas will not give up, though. Says there is something in that horse worth saving." Emma looked back at the stallion. Phantom had stopped lunging. He stood at the far end of the corral, head high, nostrils flared, watching her with something other than fury now. Wariness, calculation, the look of a creature trying to decide if she was a threat. "He is not mean," Emma said quietly. "He is afraid." "Afraid?" Wyatt laughed, but there was no mockery in it, just disbelief. "Miss Thornton, that animal broke Silas's best rope, kicked down a stall door, and bit a chunk out of my arm last Tuesday." He rolled up his sleeve to show the bruise purple and yellow against his tanned skin. "That is not fear." "Fear and fury look the same from the outside," Emma said, "but one comes from not knowing what to expect. That horse is terrified, not mean." Wyatt studied her with new eyes. The easy grin softened into something deeper, something that looked almost like wonder. "You know horses. I know fear." The words came out before she could stop them. Wyatt's smile faded entirely. For a moment he looked at her, really looked. Not the quick, appreciative glance he had given her before, but something that saw past the plain face and the calloused hands to the woman underneath. "Silas is up in the north pasture," he said quietly. "Checking the herd. He wanted me to show you around." "Then show me." Wyatt Cole was a talker. Over the next 2 hours, as he walked Emma through the ranch, he filled every silence with stories, jokes, observations about the land and the livestock and the man who owned it all. The ranch was 300 acres of grassland and foothill running up against the Bighorn Mountains. Silas ran about 200 head of cattle and kept a string of horses for sale. He had built the whole place himself, starting with nothing but a war veteran's pension and hands that refused to be idle. "Every fence, every building," Wyatt said as they walked past the barn. "When I first rode up looking for work 3 years ago, he was setting posts in the ground alone, 100-degree heat. Did not even stop to say hello, just pointed at a post hole and said, 'Dig.' Sounds like him? You have known him 1 day, and you already have him figured." Wyatt grinned. "He is not complicated. He is just closed." Closed. Wyatt considered the word, rolling it around like a stone in his mouth. "I reckon that is about right. The war did something to him. He does not talk about it, but some nights I have camped here when we are working late and I hear him." He stopped, the smile disappearing entirely. "It is not my story to tell." "Then do not tell it." Wyatt looked at her with that warmth again, that unexpected interest that made Emma uncomfortable in a way she could not name. "You are something, Miss Thornton. I mean that as a compliment." "Emma. Emma." He said it soft, tasting the name like something sweet. "Well, Emma Silas Blackwood is either the smartest man in Wyoming or the dumbest, and I have not figured which yet." "What do you mean?" "I mean if he sends you back, I am riding to that station with you, and I will not be buying a one-way ticket." Emma's cheeks burned. It had been years, years since any man had spoken to her like that, with interest, with intention. She did not know what to do with it. "You do not know me," she said. "I know what I see." "You see a woman covered in road dust wearing a patched dress." "I see a woman who stood next to Phantom without flinching and told me fear looks like fighting." Wyatt stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the hay and horse sweat on his clothes. "I see a woman whose family sent her away like she was nothing, and she showed up anyway. That is not nothing, Emma. That is everything." Hoofbeats thundered behind them. Silas rode in fast, pulling his horse up short. His pale eyes went from Emma to Wyatt, measuring the distance between them. His jaw tightened. "Fence in the south section needs mending," he said to Wyatt. His voice was flat, controlled, but Emma heard something underneath it, something that burned cold. "I was showing Emma the ranch like you asked. I will show her the rest. South fence. Now." Wyatt held up his hands, but his grin did not waver. "Yes, sir, boss." He tipped his hat to Emma. "Pleasure meeting you, ma'am. I am sure we will be seeing each other." He rode off. Silas dismounted and stood holding his horse's reins, watching Wyatt's retreating figure until the dust settled. "He talks too much," Silas said. "He was kind to me." Silas's eyes snapped to hers. Something burned there, something he pushed down fast. "I said I would show you the ranch. Let us go." He saddled a mare for her first, a gentle thing, roan-colored and calm. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Since I was 4. "This is Penny. She is steady." "I do not need steady." Silas paused, holding the saddle. "What do you need?" "Something that will keep up with you." A beat of silence stretched between them. Then Silas unsaddled the mare and walked to a bay gelding 2 stalls down, taller, younger, with fire in his step. "Buck, he will test you." "Good." Emma swung up into the saddle without help. Buck danced sideways, feeling her out, testing her balance and her nerve. She settled him with her knees, her hands quiet on the reins. The horse steadied. Silas watched all of this. His expression did not change, but something shifted in his posture, a loosening of the tension in his shoulders. "Who taught you to ride like that?" "My mother, before she died." Something moved across Silas's face, a softening so brief she might have imagined it. Then he mounted his own horse and clicked to it. "Come on." They rode. Silas took her along the fence lines, up through the cattle pastures, along the creek that ran cold and clear even in July. He did not narrate like Wyatt had. He would point at something, a water trough, a section of fence, a place where the creek bed widened, and wait. Emma understood. He was not showing her scenery. He was showing her work. Every gesture said the same thing. This is what needs tending. This is what breaks. This is what the life costs. "The creek dries up in drought years," he said as they rode along the bank. "Last summer I hauled water 3 miles every day. Alone. Wyatt helped some. You need a well closer to the south pasture." Silas looked at her. "I know." "Then why have you not dug one? One man cannot dig a well and run a ranch. One man should not have to." They stared at each other across their horses. The heat pressed down. Somewhere a hawk screamed against the endless blue sky. "You are saying you would help dig a well?" Silas asked. "I am saying I would help with whatever needs doing. That is why I am here." "You are here because your sister broke her word." "I am here because I chose to stay." Emma's voice did not waver. She held his gaze with everything she had, willing him to see what she was offering. "I could have gotten back on that stagecoach. I could have told you a pretty lie. I am here on this horse in this heat because I want to be, not for Rosalie, not for my father, for me." Silas's horse shifted beneath him. He looked away toward the mountains, his jaw working like he was chewing on something that would not go down. "There is a woman I want you to meet," he said finally. "Neighbor 8 miles east. Ruth Callahan." Emma raised an eyebrow. Wyatt mentioned her. "She will tell you things I cannot. About this life. About what it takes. What can you not tell me? What it is like to be a woman out here alone." His voice dropped lower. "I will not pretend I know that." They rode east as the afternoon heat reached its peak. The sun hung in the sky like a white hammer pressing down on them with relentless force. Emma's dress was soaked through and dust caked her arms to the elbows. She did not complain. Silas noticed. Ruth Callahan's ranch was small compared to Silas's spread. A cabin that had seen better days, a leaning barn, a garden that fought hard against the drought. But there was something fierce about the place, something that refused to give in despite the odds. The woman who came out to meet them matched her land. Maybe 58 years old, gray-haired, lean as wire, wearing men's trousers and a man's hat. Her smile could cut glass. Silas Blackwood. She wiped her hands on her thighs. "You brought me a visitor. I might faint from the shock." "Ruth, this is Emma Thornton." "The mail-order bride." Ruth's eyes were sharp, missing nothing as they moved over Emma's face, her hands, her posture. "Heard about you from Wyatt this morning. Boy rides fast when there is gossip." "I am not gossip," Emma said. "Honey, you are the most interesting thing to happen in this valley since old man Perkins's mule got drunk on fermented apples." Ruth waved them inside. "Get down off those horses and come drink something before you both shrivel up." Inside Ruth's cabin was small but fierce with personality. Every surface held something meaningful: photographs and dried flowers and books worn soft from reading. She poured cold well water and sat them down at a table covered in faded cloth. "So," Ruth looked at Emma with those cutting eyes, "Rosalie sent you." "You know about Rosalie?" "I know because Silas read me those letters all excited, trying not to show it." Ruth snorted the sound carrying years of hard-won wisdom. "Silas, she likes music. Silas, she writes so pretty. Silas, she sent a photograph." She shook her head. "I told him right then. I said, Silas, a woman who writes that pretty is not going to last 2 weeks in your kitchen. But men do not listen, especially lonely ones." Silas stared at his water. A muscle jumped in his jaw. "And now here you are," Ruth continued, turning back to Emma. "The sister, the one they did not think was worth sending in the first place." Emma felt the words land like blows on old bruises, but she held Ruth's gaze without flinching. "Here I am. You bitter about it. Would you not be?" Ruth barked a laugh so loud and sudden that Emma jumped. "I would be furious, but fury is useful out here. It keeps you warm when the fire goes out." She leaned forward, her weathered hands flat on the table. "You want to know what I was before I had this ranch? I worked the saloons in Deadwood, served drinks, danced, did whatever kept me alive." Emma did not react, did not flinch, did not judge. Ruth watched her carefully, waiting for the sour look that most respectable women wore when they heard such confessions. It did not come. Most women hear that, and their faces go sour like they bit a lemon. Most women have not been shipped west like cargo to replace their prettier sister. Ruth slapped the table and laughed so hard her eyes watered. "I like her, Silas. I swear I do." Silas said nothing, but Emma saw it. The corner of his mouth. Not a smile, just the ghost of one. But it was enough. "Let me tell you something about this life," Ruth said, sobering. "It will take everything. Your softness, your vanity, your romantic notions. It will burn them right out of you. And then you will either leave or you will grow something new in the ashes. Something harder. Something better." "I do not have any romantic notions." "Good. Then you are ahead of the game." Ruth looked at Silas, her expression shifting into something softer, something almost maternal. "She is not Rosalie." "I know. She is better." Silas's eyes lifted to Emma's. She felt the weight of his gaze like a hand on her chest pressing against her heart. "I know," he said again. quieter this time, like a confession. They rode home as the sun dropped low. The heat did not break, but it shifted from white to gold, pressing down with a gentler hand. Emma's body ached from 5 days in a stagecoach and a full day in the saddle, but she sat straight on Buck and did not slump. A mile from the ranch, Silas spoke. "Wyatt is a good man." Emma waited. "He is young, got his own place starting up south of here, 40 acres. Not much yet, but he is building." "Why are you telling me this?" Silas's jaw worked. "Because if I am not what you want, you should know there is another option. A man who smiles easy and talks easy and does not carry what I carry." Emma pulled Buck to a stop. Silas rode on 3 strides before realizing she had stopped. He turned his horse. "Is that what you want?" Emma asked. Her voice shook, and she hated it. "To pass me off to Wyatt like my father passed me off to you. That is not what I meant. Because I will not be handed around again." The words cracked out of her like a whip carrying all the anger and hurt she had swallowed for 26 years. "I am not a parcel. I am not a consolation prize. If you do not want me here, say it to my face and I will ride to town myself. But do not you dare dress up rejection as kindness." The air between them vibrated with tension. Silas sat his horse rigid, his face stripped bare. For the first time since she had met him, he looked shaken. "I was not rejecting you," he said roughly. "Then what were you doing? Giving you a choice, a real one, not the kind your father gave you." Emma's anger wavered. She saw it then. What was underneath his words? Not indifference, not reluctance, fear. This man who had survived a war and built a ranch from dirt was afraid she would leave. "I have made my choice," Emma said. "I made it when I sat on that trunk in the sun and did not cry. I made it when I cooked your supper and scrubbed your kitchen and rode your horse all day in this heat. I am making it right now." She held his gaze unflinching. "Do you want me here or not?" The question hung between them raw and simple, with no room for careful words or Western stoicism. Silas looked at her, the woman on the horse, sweat-soaked dust covered fierce as the land itself. His hand tightened on the reins. "Yes," he said. "One word, rough as gravel, heavy as stone. Then stop trying to give me away." They rode the last mile in silence, but something had broken open between them. A wall, a fence, whatever men build when they are afraid of wanting something too much. At the barn, Silas took both horses. Emma walked toward the house. At the porch steps, she turned back. "Silas," he looked up from loosening Buck's cinch. "Your biscuits were terrible," she said. "Tomorrow I am making bread." And there it was. Not the ghost of a smile this time. The real thing. Small, crooked, gone almost before it appeared, but real. "Yes, ma'am," Silas said. Emma walked inside. Behind her, she heard him talking to the horses. Low, gentle, the voice of a man who saved his softness for creatures that could not judge him for it. She put her hand against her chest, feeling her heart pound. She had told him she made her choice, and God help her, she meant it. What Emma did not know, what she could not possibly have seen, was the rider watching from the ridge above the ranch. Roar Madsen sat motionless on his horse, his deputy's badge catching the last light of the dying sun. He had followed them from a distance all day, waiting, watching, planning. The woman was here. The witness who could destroy everything he had built with Harlan Voss, the only person who could connect them to the murder in Kansas. She had to die, but not yet. Not while the mountain man was watching her like she was something precious. Madsen had seen that look before. A man who looked at a woman that way would die protecting her. So he would wait. He would plan. He would bring enough men to ensure there were no survivors. And then Emma Thornton would join the other witnesses in unmarked graves scattered across the territory. Madsen turned his horse and rode back toward Buffalo, already composing the message he would send to Voss. But Madsen was not patient enough to wait. 2 days later, he rode to the ranch alone, wearing his badge like a shield. Silas was in the north pasture. Emma was hanging laundry when she heard the hoofbeats. The deputy dismounted slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "Mrs. Thornton," he said. "Or should I say Miss Thornton? I do not believe you are married yet." Emma's hands stilled on the wet sheet. She knew that face. She knew that voice. The saloon in Kansas, the alley, the conversation about witnesses and bodies. "Can I help you, Deputy?" "Just checking on the newcomers." Madsen walked closer, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Making sure everyone is settling in safe." He stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that she could see the letter folded in his jacket pocket, close enough that she could read the wax seal, a V surrounded by laurel leaves. Voss. "Beautiful country," Madsen said, looking around. "Dangerous, though. Things happen to people out here. Accidents, disappearances." His eyes locked onto hers, especially to people who hear things they should not. Emma did not flinch. "I do not know what you mean." "I think you do." He stepped closer. "I think you remember a Tuesday night in Kansas, an alley beside a saloon, a conversation you were not meant to hear." Emma's heart hammered, but her face stayed still. "I remember buying medicine for my father. That is all." Madsen studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled cold and knowing. "We will talk again, Miss Thornton. Soon." He mounted his horse and rode away. Emma waited until he disappeared over the ridge. Then she looked at her hand. The letter was there. She had lifted it from his pocket when he stepped close, her fingers quick and light from years of mending and sewing. She unfolded it with trembling hands. "Deal with the Kansas problem. The witness cannot reach a marshal. Use whatever men you need. H.V." Emma folded the letter and slipped it into her dress. That night she rode to Ruth's ranch and told her everything. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of Emma Thornton learning the rhythms of a life she had never imagined. She made bread that first morning just as she had promised. Silas ate 3 slices without speaking, then left a 4th slice on the counter wrapped in a cloth. She found it at noon with a note in his careful handwriting. For later, it was good. 4 words from Silas Blackwood. That was a speech. The days found their pattern. Emma rose before dawn, started the stove-cooked breakfast. Silas came in from the barn smelling like hay and horse sweat, ate in his quiet way, and headed out. She kept the house tended, the garden mended what needed mending. In the evenings they sat at the kitchen table, Silas cleaning his tack, Emma sewing, and the silence between them grew warm. She learned his habits. He took his coffee black. He checked the barn lock 3 times every night. He slept with his boots beside the bed, ready to run at a moment's notice. A soldier's habit he could not break. On bad nights she heard him pacing upstairs. Sometimes a sound that might have been a man trying not to cry. She never went to him. Not yet. She had not earned that. On the 4th morning, Emma went to Phantom's corral alone. The stallion threw himself against the far fence when he saw her. She sat on a stump 10 feet from the rails and did nothing. Just sat. Let him rage. She came back the next morning, and the next. On the 7th day, Phantom did not lunge. He stood at the far fence, trembling, watching her with those wild black eyes. On the 10th day, he took a step toward her. Silas found her there, sitting perfectly still, while Phantom stood 6 feet away, his nostrils flaring, his body taut as wire. "Do not move," Emma whispered without turning. Silas froze at the barn door. Phantom's ears swiveled toward the new sound, but his attention stayed on Emma. He stretched his neck toward her lips, peeling back from his teeth. Not biting, reaching. His muzzle touched her outstretched hand. 1 heartbeat. 2. Then Phantom jerked back and bolted to the far side of the corral. But he had touched her. The wild, unbreakable horse had touched her hand. Emma turned to look at Silas. He stood at the barn door, hat in hand, staring at her like she had split the earth open. "How?" he managed. "I did not ask him for anything. I just showed up." Something moved behind Silas's eyes. Deep, heavy, raw. He opened his mouth closed. It put his hat back on. "Breakfast ready?" he asked, and his voice was not steady. "It is ready." He walked past her toward the house, and as he passed, his hand brushed her shoulder. Light. Deliberate. Gone before she could react. Emma pressed her fingers against the place where Phantom's muzzle had touched. Warm. Alive. A beginning inside a beginning. That afternoon Wyatt Cole showed up with a busted wagon wheel and a grin that would not quit. "Need to borrow Silas's forge," he said, but his eyes went straight to Emma, who was hauling water to the garden. "Help yourself," Silas said from the porch. His voice carried an edge. Wyatt worked on his wheel. Emma worked in the garden. And Silas watched them both from the porch with a stillness that crackled like heat lightning. "You are looking well, Emma," Wyatt called over. "This country agrees with you. Hard work agrees with me. Everything about you agrees with me." Wyatt's grin was wide, warm, impossible to dislike. "I mean that honest." A board creaked on the porch. Silas stood up. "Wheel done. It is not even close to done. Then work faster." Wyatt looked from Silas to Emma and back. His grin shifted into something knowing. "Yes, sir, boss. Working faster." That evening, after Wyatt left, Silas stood at the kitchen basin washing his hands with the focus of a man defusing a bomb. "Wyatt wants to court you," he said. Emma set down the dish she was drying. "I know. He told you. He did not have to." Silas's hands stilled in the water. "He has a good spread starting up. He is young, easy with people. He would make a woman happy. Are you giving that speech for his benefit or yours?" Silas turned. Water dripped from his hands onto the floor. "What? Last time you talked like this, I told you to stop handing me off. Did you forget? I am not handing you off. I am telling you the facts." "Here are the facts." Emma stepped closer. "I do not want easy. I do not want young and charming. I want someone who checks the barn lock 3 times and leaves bread wrapped in a cloth with a 4-word note. I want someone who is afraid to want things, but wants them anyway." The kitchen was very quiet. Water dripped from Silas's hands. His chest rose and fell. "You are talking about me," he said. "I am talking about you. Emma, I am a broken man. The war took pieces of me I cannot get back. Some nights I wake up and I do not know where I am. Some days the darkness comes down and I cannot speak, cannot move, cannot be anything worth being near. I know. You do not know. You have seen the good weeks. The bad ones, they are worse than you can imagine. Then show me the bad ones. Trust me with them." Silas looked at her like a drowning man looks at a rope wanting to grab hold, terrified it will snap. "I need time," he said. "Take it. You will wait." "Silas, I crossed 5 states on a stagecoach to marry a man I never met. I can wait." He nodded once. Then he dried his hands and walked out to the barn. Emma stood in the kitchen listening to his boots cross the porch, wondering what it would take to reach the man behind those walls. She did not have to wonder long. The letter arrived 3 days later. Wyatt brought it from town with the rest of the mail, his expression careful as he handed it to Silas. The envelope was cream-colored, the handwriting elegant and feminine, Rosalie's handwriting. Silas read it in silence, his face giving nothing away. Then he handed it to Emma without a word. "Dear Mr. Blackwood," she read aloud. "Robert Calloway and I have ended our understanding, and I am now free to honor my original commitment. I believe that you and I shared something real in our correspondence, a meeting of souls that mere distance could not diminish. I am prepared to travel to Wyoming at the earliest opportunity. Father will arrange passage. I ask only that you send word, and I will come to you as I always should have." As for Emma, she would surely be happier returning to familiar surroundings. This frontier life was never meant for someone of her disposition. Yours, Rosalie Thornton. P.S. I am bringing the photograph, the real one, so you can see what you have been missing. Emma set the letter on the table. Her hands were steady, but something inside her had gone very still. "She wants to replace me," she said quietly. "She is coming because her banker dropped her. Not for you, for the ranch, for a roof over her head. You do not know that. I know exactly that." Silas picked up the letter and read the last paragraph again. His jaw tightened. "She says she is bringing the photograph, the real one, so I can see what I am missing." The words landed like a slap. Emma pressed her floury hands flat on the table. "Maybe you should see it. What? The photograph. Maybe you should see what Rosalie really looks like, what you were supposed to get. Emma heard the bitterness in her own voice and hated it. Maybe then you can decide. I have decided. You said you needed time. I needed time to figure out how to say it, not to figure out what I want. Silas took the letter from the table, walked to the stove, opened the firebox, and dropped it in. The paper caught and curled Rosalie's pretty words, turning to ash. You burned it, Emma whispered. It did not deserve an answer. He turned back to her. The firelight caught the scar on his arm, the hard line of his jaw. I will write to your father. Tell him Rosalie's offer is refused and you are staying, if you are willing. As what? The question hung between them. 3 weeks of careful distance of brushed shoulders and 4-word notes and silence that said more than talking. As my wife, Silas said, if you will have me. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. She opened her mouth and nothing came out. I know I have not courted you proper. Silas continued, the words coming rough and fast, like he would break if he stopped. I have not bought you flowers, or taken you dancing, or said the things a man is supposed to say. I cannot promise I will be good at this. I cannot promise the dark days will not come. But I can promise I will be here every morning, every night, choosing you. Silas, I watched you tame that horse. 10 days of just sitting there asking for nothing. You taught me something, Emma. You taught me that the strongest thing a person can do is just show up and stay. Emma's eyes burned. She pressed her lips together hard. You do not have to answer now, he said. I know I am not what you expected. I know this is not how it is supposed to go. No ring, no kneeling, no pretty words. No. Silas stopped. What? I said no. You are refusing. I am saying no to waiting. Emma stepped around the table, put her flower-covered hands on his face, and held him still. I am sure. I have been sure since I rode your horse all day, and you told me I had options, and I chose you anyway. I am sure right now. His hands came up to cover hers. Rough palms against rough palms. 2 people made of the same hard material. Saturday, he said. The preacher comes through town Saturday. Saturday. I will tell Ruth. She will want to help. She will want to boss. Same thing. And there it was, that real smile, the one she had seen only once before. Crooked, uncertain, beautiful. Saturday, Emma. Saturday. He left for the barn. Emma stood in the kitchen with flour on her face and bread dough going flat on the table and tears running down her cheeks. Happy tears. The first in longer than she could remember. What neither of them knew was that Roar Madsen had also received a letter that day, from Harland Voss. The instructions were clear. The witness had to be eliminated before she could talk, before she could remember what she had heard in that Kansas saloon, before she could connect the deputy to the murder of a man who had known too much. Madsen had 6 men ready. They would ride tonight. By dawn, Emma Thornton would be dead, or so he planned. The storm rolled in Friday night, not the gradual kind with clouds building slow and warning coming hours ahead. This one hit like a fist. Sky turning green, wind rising from nothing to fury in minutes, lightning splitting the darkness like cracks in the world. Emma was closing the shutters when she heard Silas shout from the barn, "Phantom is out!" She ran. The wind nearly took her off her feet. The first fat drops of rain hit like pebbles thrown by an angry hand. Silas was at the corral gripping the broken gate. The rails were shattered. Phantom had kicked clean through them. "Which way?" Emma shouted over the wind. "Up." Silas pointed toward the mountains. "He will go high. He always goes high. In this storm he will get killed." "I know." Silas was already saddling his horse, his hands moving fast, his face set in that hard soldier's focus she had glimpsed before. "Stay here." "No." "Emma, this storm will kill you." "I am the only one he will come to. You know that." Silas's hands stilled on the cinch. She saw the war in his eyes, the need to protect her fighting the knowledge that she was right. "Saddle Buck," she said. "I am going." They rode into the storm. The wind screamed through the canyons, driving rain sideways. Lightning turned the world white, then black, then white again. Emma bent low over Buck's neck, following Silas's horse up a trail that was already turning to mud. They climbed for 20 minutes. 30. The trail narrowed, switchbacking up the mountainside. Twice Buck slipped and Emma felt her stomach drop before the horse caught himself. "There." Silas pointed. Phantom stood on a ledge above them, white as the lightning that cracked behind him, his mane whipped by the wind. He screamed a sound like tearing metal and reared. "He is trapped," Emma said. "The trail above him is washed out. He cannot go higher. He will not come down, not with the storm. He will come to me. Emma, that ledge is barely holding together." But she was already dismounting. The rain hammered her, soaking through to her skin in seconds. The footing was treacherous, loose rock and mud. One wrong step and she would slide 100 feet down the mountain. "Emma!" Silas's voice was ragged with fear. She climbed, hand over hand, boots slipping, fingers clawing at rock. The wind tried to peel her off the mountain. Lightning struck somewhere close enough that she felt the thunder in her bones. She reached the ledge. Phantom lunged at her. Ears, flat teeth, bared eyes rolling white with terror. Emma did not move. She stood in the rain and the wind and the fury and held perfectly still. "Easy," she said. The wind tore the word away, but Phantom heard something, felt something. He stopped. His sides heaved like bellows. His entire body trembled. Lightning cracked and he flinched, and Emma saw what she had seen from the first day. Not wildness. Fear. Fear so deep it looked like rage. "I know," she said. "I know, boy. Everything is loud and nothing makes sense. But I am here. I am right here." Phantom trembled. His head dropped an inch. 2. Emma reached out her hand. Rain ran down her arm, dripped from her fingers. Phantom's muzzle touched her palm, hot breath against cold skin. "Come on," she whispered. "Come down with me. I will not let anything hurt you." The horse took one step, then another. Emma turned slowly, her hand on his neck, and led him down the trail. Step by step, through the rain, through the darkness, through the storm that was trying to destroy everything. Silas was waiting at the bottom, holding the horses. His face was white. When Emma reached him with Phantom walking at her shoulder like a broken-hearted dog, Silas made a sound she had never heard from him. Relief and terror and something else all tangled together. "Do not ever do that again," he said. "He would have died up there." "You could have died up there." Silas's voice cracked on the last word. He grabbed her arm, pulling her close, and for a moment his forehead touched hers. Rain ran between their faces. "Do not leave me, Emma. Do not dare." "I am not going anywhere." They could not ride back. The trail was a river of mud. The creek between them and the ranch had swollen past its banks. Lightning still split the sky every few seconds. "There is a cabin," Silas said. "Line shack, half-mile north. We can shelter." They led the horses through the storm, Phantom following Emma like a shadow. The cabin was tiny, barely standing, but it had a roof and 4 walls and a small stone fireplace. Silas got the horses under a lean-to out back, while Emma found dry wood and started a fire with shaking hands. When he came inside, water streaming from every inch of him, Emma had the fire going and had found a moth-eaten blanket on a shelf. "One blanket," she said. "You take it. Do not be stupid. We are both soaked. We will both freeze." Silas stood by the door, rigid. The propriety of the situation, unmarried, alone, one blanket was written all over his face. "Silas, we are getting married tomorrow. Sit down." He sat. Emma draped the blanket over both their shoulders. They sat side by side, backs against the wall, shivering, listening to the storm pound the roof. The fire crackled and spit, throwing shadows across the rough walls. "Tell me about the war," Emma said. Silas went rigid beside her. "No. You said the dark days would come, that I did not know what they looked like. Show me now." "Emma, do not ask me to go there." You asked me to trust you. Trust goes both ways." The fire popped. Rain hammered the roof. Outside, Phantom whinnied and one of the other horses answered. Silas's hands clenched on his knees. His jaw worked. Then slowly, like a man opening a wound to let the poison out, he spoke. "Gettysburg. I was 20 years old. Sergeant by then because everyone above me was dead." Emma did not speak, did not move. 3 days. That is how long it lasted. 3 days of hell on earth. He stopped. His breathing had changed. Shallow. Fast. The sounds, Emma. I can still hear them. Men screaming. Not yelling, not battle cries. Screaming like animals. And the silence after. That was worse. The silence of a field covered with the dead. His hands trembled. Emma reached over and took one. He gripped her fingers so hard it hurt. I had 16 men under me at the start. By the end of the second day, I had 4. Boys Emma, 17, 18 years old, looking at me like I could save them. His voice broke. I could not save them. You survived. That is not the same as saving. It is when you have built something with the life you kept. Silas turned to look at her. His eyes were wet in the firelight. She had never seen him cry, had not thought he could. After the war, I could not be around people, could not stand the noise, the touching, the way everyone pretended things were normal. So I came west, as far west as I could get. Built the ranch because building things was the only way to stop remembering the things I destroyed. And the letters. He almost laughed. Ruth said I needed someone. I was too broken to find anyone in person, so I wrote an advertisement. Figured a woman who would answer a stranger's letter might understand loneliness. Rosalie did not understand loneliness. No, but you do. Emma leaned into him. His arm came around her, pulling the blanket tighter. They sat together, wet and cold and shaking, and something enormous and fragile passed between them. I have nightmares, he said. Bad ones. I will wake up fighting. I might scare you. You will not scare me. I scared Wyatt once. Nearly broke his jaw before I knew where I was. I am not Wyatt. Emma pressed closer. And I do not scare easy. Silas rested his chin on top of her head. His breathing slowed. The trembling eased. Tomorrow, he said, if the water goes down. Tomorrow. Are you certain, Emma? Knowing what you know now. She lifted her head to look at him. This man, this scarred, haunted, stubborn man who had built a world out of pain and asked for nothing but honesty. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Silas's hand found her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone, rough against rough. And then he kissed her, gentle and fierce and desperate all at once, tasting like rain and wood smoke and years of loneliness breaking open. Emma kissed him back, and the storm raged outside, but inside the cabin something had gone quiet at last, something that had been screaming in both of them for a very, very long time. They held each other through the night, not sleeping, not talking, just breathing together, learning the rhythm of each other's stillness. When dawn broke gray and dripping, the storm had passed. Emma stepped outside. The world was washed clean. Phantom stood under the lean to watching her. He nickered softly. Silas came out behind her. He looked at the sky, the mud, the trail down to the valley. Creek will be down by noon, he said. Then we ride at noon. The preacher will wait. Silas took her hand. Wet, cold, calloused. Perfect. Mrs. Blackwood, he said, testing the words. Not yet. Soon. Emma looked at Phantom, at the mountains, at this hard, beautiful life she had been thrown into like a stone into a river. Soon, she said. But neither of them knew what was waiting for them at the ranch. Neither of them knew that Roar Madsen and his men had already come and gone in the night, finding the cabin empty, finding evidence of a woman living there, finding reasons to return with more men and more guns, and orders from Harlan Voss that could not be ignored. The storm had saved Emma's life. But the danger was only beginning. The creek went down by noon, just as Silas had predicted. They rode back to the ranch in a silence that held them together instead of keeping them apart. Emma's dress was still damp, her hair a tangled mess, mud caked to her boots past the ankles. She had never felt more alive. Ruth Callahan's wagon was parked by the house when they arrived. The older woman stood on the porch with her arms crossed and murder in her eyes. "Where the hell have you been?" She did not wait for an answer. Her sharp gaze moved from Emma's mud-splattered dress to Silas's exhausted face, reading the truth written there as clearly as words on a page. "The preacher rode in at 9 this morning. I have been holding him hostage with coffee for 3 hours. Wyatt is here too, pacing like a nervous cat. And you two show up looking like you spent the night in a—" She stopped, looked at Emma, looked at Silas, looked at the way they stood close together, shoulders almost touching. "Well," Ruth uncrossed her arms, "about damn time. We got caught in the storm," Emma said. "Up on the mountain. Phantom broke out. And you went after him." Ruth shook her head, but there was something like pride in her weathered face. "Of course you did. Girl, you have got more guts than sense. Get inside. I laid out a dress for you and heated water. You have got 30 minutes before that preacher loses his patience and rides back to town." Emma washed fast, scrubbing storm and mud from her skin while her heart pounded with something that felt like joy. Ruth helped her into the gray wool dress, the nicest thing Emma owned, and pinned her hair up with a silver comb that had belonged to Ruth's mother. "Hold still." Ruth reached into her pocket and pulled out a sprig of wildflowers already wilting in the summer heat. She tucked them into Emma's hair beside the comb. "Picked them this morning. They are half dead, but they are honest. Like me. Like you." Ruth gripped Emma's shoulders and turned her to face the small mirror on the wall. "Listen to me. When you walk out there, you do not apologize for who you are. You do not think about Rosalie or your father or anyone who ever made you feel small. You walk out there like you belong, because you do." Emma's eyes burned. "Ruth, do not you dare cry. I spent 20 minutes on that hair." Reverend Pratt was a thin man with patient eyes and a Bible worn soft from years of use. He stood in the front room of the cabin, Wyatt beside him as witness. And when Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, both men looked up. Wyatt made a sound. Quiet. Involuntary. His eyes went wide. But Emma was not looking at Wyatt. Silas stood by the fireplace in a clean white shirt, freshly shaved, his dark hair combed back from his face. He had found a collar somewhere stiff and slightly crooked. His boots were polished. And when he saw Emma, his face did something she had never seen it do. It opened. All the walls, all the careful blankness, all the soldier's discipline. Gone. For 3 heartbeats, Silas Blackwood looked at Emma Thornton with everything he had and everything he was. Then he caught himself. The walls came partway back, but his eyes stayed soft, and when Emma reached him at the bottom of the stairs, his hand was already out waiting for hers. "Ready?" Reverend Pratt asked. "Been ready," Silas said. His voice was rough but steady. The ceremony was short. Reverend Pratt read from his Bible, spoke of partnership and endurance of the covenant between 2 souls who choose to face the world together. Emma heard about half of it. The rest was drowned out by the sound of her own heartbeat and the steady pressure of Silas's hand in hers. "Do you, Silas James Blackwood, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." The words came before the Reverend finished the question. "And do you, Emma May Thornton, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." Silas slid a ring onto her finger, plain iron hand forged. It was warm from his pocket. "I made it," he said low enough for only her to hear. "Last night before the storm." Emma looked at the ring, looked at his face, looked at this man who had spent the night before their wedding at his forge, hammering iron into a circle for her finger while the sky darkened and the wind began to rise. "It is perfect," she said. "You may kiss the bride," Reverend Pratt began. But Silas had already cupped her face in his hands. The kiss was brief, firm, and full of everything he could not say with words. Ruth blew her nose loudly. Wyatt clapped once, then stopped. His smile was tight around the edges, and something in his eyes looked a lot like grief, but he stepped forward and shook Silas's hand. "You are a lucky man, Silas." "I know. And if you ever forget it, I will remind you." Wyatt turned to Emma. He took her hand, pressed it once, then let go. "Mrs. Blackwood, it suits you." "Thank you, Wyatt." He tipped his hat. The gesture was small final. A door closing. Emma felt it, and she was sorry for it, and she let it pass. Ruth had somehow produced a cake, small, lopsided, frosted with something that might have been sugar paste. "Do not ask where I got the sugar," she said. "I called in favors going back to 1862. They ate cake in the kitchen. Silas, Emma, Ruth, Wyatt, and Reverend Pratt. It was the most people the house had ever held, the most noise, the most laughter. Silas sat close to Emma, their shoulders touching. And when Ruth told a story about a preacher's mule in Deadwood, Emma heard a sound she had never heard before, Silas laughing. Not the ghost of a smile, not the crooked almost grin, a real laugh, low and rough and rusty from disuse like a gate that had not swung in years. Emma turned to look at him, and the expression on her face made Ruth go quiet. "Well," Ruth said softly, "there it is." By evening the guests had gone. The Reverend rode back to town. Wyatt headed south to his own spread. Ruth climbed into her wagon with a promise to check on them in a few days, and Emma and Silas stood on the porch of their cabin watching the sun set behind the mountains in a blaze of orange and gold. "Mrs. Blackwood," Silas said. "Mr. Blackwood." He put his arm around her, and she leaned into him, and for a moment everything was perfect. They did not know that 6 riders were already on the mountain road moving fast through the fading light. They did not know that Roar Madsen had waited long enough, that Harlan Voss had sent word that the witness had to die tonight, that by midnight the men with torches would surround the cabin. They only knew that they were together, that they were married, that for the first time in either of their lives they were home. The attack came at midnight. Silas woke first. The soldier in him never truly slept, and something in the night had changed, a sound that did not belong, the absence of crickets, the distant rhythm of hoofbeats. He was out of bed and at the window before Emma fully opened her eyes. "They are coming," he said. "How many?" 7, maybe more. He was already pulling on his boots, reaching for the rifle that stood beside the door. "Torches, coming up the valley road." Emma rose and dressed quickly, her hands steady despite the fear that coiled in her stomach. She had known this moment would come. Ever since she had seen Roar Madsen's face at the ranch, ever since she had remembered where she had seen him before she had known. "It is Madsen," she said. "He is coming for me. He is coming for both of us now." Silas handed her a pistol. She took it, checked the cylinder, met his eyes in the darkness. "Can you use that? My mother taught me to shoot before she taught me to ride." Something flickered across his face. Pride, maybe, or love, or both. "Stay inside, away from the windows. I will hold them at the door." "Silas?" He stopped. "I am not hiding while you fight alone. Emma, these men are killers. Madsen has done this before. They will not stop until someone is dead." "Then let us make sure it is not us." Outside the torches were closer now, bright points of fire moving through the darkness like the eyes of predators. Emma counted 7. 8. More than they could fight. Wyatt burst through the back door, breathing hard, a rifle in his hands. "Saw them from my place," he said. "Rode fast as I could." "How many did you count?" 8 for certain, could be more in the trees. Silas nodded. "We hold the cabin, force them to come to us." The first shot shattered the front window. Emma dropped to the floor as glass exploded across the room. Silas fired back, the rifle crack deafening in the enclosed space. Outside, a man screamed. "One down," Wyatt said grimly. More shots, more breaking glass. The cabin filled with smoke and the smell of gunpowder. Madsen's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by the night. "Blackwood, send the woman out and we let you live." Silas did not answer. He fired again, and another scream echoed from the darkness. "This is official business. She is a witness to a crime. Hand her over." "She is my wife," Silas shouted back. "And you are not law. You are a murderer with a badge." The gunfire intensified. Wood splintered as bullets tore through the walls. Emma crouched behind the heavy table, firing through the shattered window when she saw movement. Then she saw something else. Through the window that faced the barn, she could see torchlight moving, men circling around, cutting off escape. And in the corral, illuminated by the flickering light, Phantom stood motionless, watching, waiting. A plan formed in her mind. Desperate, possibly insane, but it might be the only chance they had. "Silas." He turned toward her, still firing. "They are circling the barn. If they get behind us, we are trapped. I know we hold as long as we can and pray for dawn." "No." Emma grabbed his arm. "I have a plan, but you have to trust me." "Emma, whatever you are thinking." "I can ride Phantom. He will follow me. I can draw them away while you and Wyatt hold the cabin." "That is suicide. It is our only chance." She held his gaze, willing him to understand. "I know these mountains now. You showed me. There is a trail up to the ridge, the one we took when Phantom escaped. If I can reach the high ground they cannot follow. Their horses will not make that climb. Phantom barely made that climb. Phantom trusts me, and I trust him." A bullet slammed into the wall inches from Silas's head. He did not flinch. "You are asking me to let you ride into a gang of killers. I am asking you to let me save us both." The battle raged around them. Smoke filled the air. Somewhere outside, Madsen was shouting orders. Silas looked at his wife, the woman who had tamed an untamable horse, who had survived 5 days in a stagecoach to marry a stranger, who had never broken not once, no matter how hard life had tried to crack her. "The ridge trail comes out above Ruth's place," he said finally. "If you make it that far, ride to her. She will know what to do. And if I do not make it—" Silas cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Then I will find you. In this life or the next. I will always find you." He kissed her hard and fast, tasting like smoke and desperation. "Now go, before I change my mind." Emma ran. She slipped out the back door, staying low, using the cabin as cover. The barn was 50 feet away, an impossible distance under fire. She waited for a lull in the shooting, then sprinted. Bullets kicked up dirt around her feet. A man shouted and another fired. But she was faster than they expected, and then she was through the barn door and sliding to a stop beside Phantom's stall. The white stallion was already alert, ears pricked forward, nostrils flaring at the smell of smoke and gunpowder. "It is time," Emma said. "Time to show them what we can do." She grabbed a bridle from the wall, no time for a saddle. Phantom stood still as she slipped the bit between his teeth, steady as stone despite the chaos outside. She swung onto his bare back. For one heartbeat the horse tensed beneath her. Every muscle coiled, ready to explode. "Easy," Emma whispered. "We are in this together." Then she kicked her heels against his flanks, and Phantom surged forward. They burst out of the barn like a comet white horse and desperate woman moving as one. Emma bent low over his neck, feeling his powerful stride eat up the ground beneath them. Shouts erupted behind her. Torchlight swung in her direction. Gunfire cracked. But Phantom was fast, faster than anything Emma had ever ridden. The world blurred past them as the stallion stretched out, running like his life depended on it. Because it did. All their lives did. Madsen saw her and screamed an order. 3 riders peeled off from the attack on the cabin, spurring their horses after her. Emma did not look back. She focused on the trail ahead, the narrow path that wound up into the mountains, the path that would save them or kill them all. The climb began. Phantom's hooves scrambled on loose rock. The trail was barely visible in the darkness, a thin ribbon of slightly less steep terrain winding up the mountainside. One wrong step and they would tumble into the void. Behind her, she could hear the pursuit. Hoofbeats shouted curses, the crack of gunfire that went wide. "Come on," Emma urged. "Come on, boy. Show them who you are." Phantom responded with a burst of speed that made her gasp. He was not running from fear anymore. He was running with purpose, running because she had asked him to. The ridge trail grew steeper, more treacherous. Emma felt Phantom's muscles bunching and releasing beneath her, felt the incredible power of a horse that had run wild on these mountains his entire life. The pursuers fell back. Their horses bred for flatland could not match Phantom's sure-footed climb. One by one, Emma heard them stop, heard the curses as they realized they could not follow. But Madsen did not stop. He was behind her, closer than the others, pushing his horse up the trail with a fury that bordered on madness. His face was a mask of rage in the torchlight. "You cannot run forever," he screamed. "Voss wants you dead, and dead you will be." Emma did not answer. She focused on the trail, on Phantom's rhythm, on the ridge that grew closer with every stride. And then they were there. The trail leveled out onto a wide ledge, the same ledge where she had found Phantom in the storm. Below them, the valley spread out like a dark ocean, the cabin a tiny point of light where gunfire still flashed. Madsen's horse scrambled up the last stretch of trail, breathing hard, foam flecking its mouth. The deputy drew his pistol. "End of the line," he said. Emma slid off Phantom's back. The white stallion moved to stand beside her, not behind her. Together. "You are the only witness," Madsen continued, his gun leveled at her chest. "The only one who heard me and Voss in that saloon. With you dead, there is nothing to connect us to anything. You are wrong. I am never wrong. You are wrong about me being the only witness." Emma's voice was steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I wrote down everything I heard. Names, dates, what you said about solving problems, about the man you killed. I gave that paper to Ruth Callahan." Madsen's smile faltered. "She is riding to Buffalo right now, to the federal marshal who came in yesterday on the morning stage. By dawn, he will know everything." "You are lying." "I do not lie. I never have. Ask anyone who knows me." Madsen's gun hand trembled. His eyes darted toward the trail behind him as if expecting to see a posse already forming. "And there is something else," Emma said. "Something you lost." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "The letter Voss sent you. The one with his seal and his signature. The one that ordered you to kill the witness in Kansas and then come here to finish the job. You kept it in your jacket pocket. I took it the first night you came to the ranch." Madsen's free hand flew to his pocket. Empty. "Ruth has that too. By morning it will be in the federal marshal's hands. Harlan Voss will hang, and so will you." The deputy's face twisted. The mask of confident cruelty cracked, revealing the desperate, cornered animal underneath. "Then I will kill you anyway," he snarled. "And I will find Ruth Callahan, and I will burn her ranch to the ground, and I will—" The gunshot came from behind him. Madsen staggered forward, his pistol falling from nerveless fingers. He turned, confusion on his face, and saw Silas Blackwood standing at the top of the trail with a smoking rifle. "You talk too much," Silas said. Madsen fell. Silas crossed the ledge in 3 strides and pulled Emma into his arms. She could feel him shaking, feel the terror he had held in check as long as he could. "I told you to hold the cabin," she said against his chest. "And I told you I would always find you." Below them the gunfire at the cabin had stopped. In the gray light of approaching dawn they could see figures moving, torches scattered on the ground, horses milling without riders. "Wyatt?" Emma asked. "Alive. Ruth showed up with 6 men from town. Apparently she heard the shooting from 8 miles away and decided to investigate." "Ruth heard gunfire from 8 miles away." Silas almost smiled. "Ruth hears everything. She will probably know what we had for breakfast by noon." Emma looked down at Madsen's body, at the blood spreading across the rocks. "It is over." "Not quite." Silas put his arm around her. "We still have to talk to that federal marshal, and someone has to ride to Voss's place before he gets wind of this and runs. Ruth will handle that. Ruth will handle everything. She always does." They stood together on the ridge as the sun rose over the Bighorn Mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Phantom stood nearby, calm now, watching them with eyes that held no fear. Emma leaned into her husband and felt his heart beating against her back. "We made it," she said. "We made it." 3 days later, Emma stood before the federal marshal in Buffalo, telling her story for the third time. Every detail, every word she had overheard in that Kansas saloon, every piece of evidence she had gathered. The marshal, a grizzled man named Thomas Webb, who had seen too much to be surprised by anything, listened without interruption. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "Mrs. Blackwood, your testimony combined with the letter and the statements from the men we captured is enough to bring down Harlan Voss and his entire operation. We have been trying to connect him to a string of murders across 3 territories for years. You just handed us everything we needed. What happens now? Now we ride to Voss's ranch with 20 men and enough warrants to paper his walls. He will hang before winter. And Madsen's men, the ones who survived, will testify against Voss in exchange for their lives. They will spend the rest of their days in prison." Webb leaned forward. "You are a brave woman, Mrs. Blackwood. Most people would have run." "I did run. I ran all the way to Wyoming. And then you stopped running. That is the part that matters." When Emma walked out of the marshal's office, Silas was waiting. He stood with his back against a hitching post, arms crossed, watching the street with the easy alertness of a man who had learned long ago to always know where the exits were. He straightened when he saw her. "It is done," Emma said. "They are going after Voss today." Silas nodded. He did not speak. He just took her hand and held it, and they stood together in the dusty street while the town moved around them. "Take me home," Emma said. "Yes, ma'am." They rode back to the ranch in a silence that had become comfortable, familiar. The land spread out around them, vast and wild and beautiful, and Emma felt something she had never felt before. She felt like she belonged. Days passed, then weeks. The heat of summer began to fade, replaced by the crisp edge of approaching autumn. The leaves on the cottonwoods along the creek turned gold, and the nights grew cool enough for fires in the hearth. Emma learned the rhythm of the ranch. The morning chores, the afternoon work, the evening quiet. She learned when Silas needed space and when he needed her close. She learned the sound of his nightmares and the words that could bring him back from wherever the darkness took him. She learned that she was happy. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emma took Silas's hand and placed it on her stomach. He went very still. "Emma, 2 months. I have been waiting for the right time to tell you." 2 months? You are—" "I am sure." Silas's hand trembled against her stomach. This man who had survived Gettysburg, who had built a ranch from nothing, who had faced down killers without flinching. His hand trembled. "A baby," he said. "A baby." He slid off his chair and onto his knees, pressing his forehead against her belly, his shoulders shaking. Emma ran her fingers through his hair and let him hold her. "I thought—" His voice was muffled, broken. "After the war, I thought I had used up all my chances, that the good things were gone. All I had left was work and survival. You were wrong. I was wrong." He looked up at her, and his face, God, his face, open and raw and full of a joy so fierce it hurt to look at. "Emma, I do not have the words. You never do." She smiled down at him. "That is why I love you." He stood, pulled her up, held her close enough that she could feel his heartbeat through both their shirts. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said. "Mr. Blackwood, we are going to be a family. We already are." Outside, Phantom stood in the corral with his head raised to the wind. The mountains rose against the darkening sky, and the land that had once been Silas's alone now held 2 hearts, soon to be 3. A letter arrived from Kansas a week later. Emma recognized the handwriting immediately. Rosalie's elegant script, the same hand that had written to Silas for 4 months, promising things she never intended to deliver. She opened it with steady hands. "Dear Emma, I have heard what happened. The newspapers here are full of it. They call you a hero. They say you brought down one of the most powerful men in Wyoming. I do not know how to say what I need to say, so I will just say it. Robert's mother found out about the mail order arrangement. She said it made me look desperate, common. She told Robert that a woman who would advertise herself like that was not fit for the Calloway name. He agreed with her. He smiled that sweet smile of his and said perhaps it was for the best. Father was furious. Martha said I had shamed the family. They told me to come to you to convince your husband to take me instead. Father said if I could not do that, I should not bother coming home. I am not asking for that. I know now what I did not understand before. I know you and Silas belong together. I saw it in the way he burned my letter without reading the second page. I saw it in the way every story about Wyoming mentioned your name beside his. I do not know what to do. I have no skills, no prospects. The only man who wanted me threw me away because his mother disapproved. I am not asking you to save me. I know I do not deserve that. I am just asking if there is anywhere I can go, anything I can do, any way to start over. Your sister Rosalie. Emma read the letter twice. Then she handed it to Silas. He read it in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he looked at Emma. What do you want to do? She is my sister. She is the sister who sent you away like you were nothing. Yes. And because she sent me away, I found you. Silas was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Write to Ruth. Ask if she needs help. That woman has been running her place alone for too long. You would do that, after everything. I would do anything for you. And if helping your sister makes you happy, he shrugged, then I reckon I can stand having a Thornton around, even if it is the wrong one. Emma wrote to Ruth that afternoon. The reply came 3 days later, delivered by a writer who seemed impressed that anyone would get a response from Ruth Callahan that fast. Send her. I need someone to keep house while I handle the real work. If she can learn to be useful, she can stay. If she cannot, I will put her on a stage myself. P.S. Tell that husband of yours he still owes me for the sugar. Rosalie arrived on a stagecoach 2 weeks later. She stepped off onto the platform at Buffalo wearing a fine dress and carrying a parasol, looking as out of place as a rose in a cornfield. Emma was waiting. The sisters stood facing each other for a long moment. Rosalie's beauty was still there, the golden hair and the blue eyes, but something had changed. The confidence was gone. The easy assumption that the world would give her what she wanted had cracked. She looked like someone who had finally learned that pretty was not enough. Emma, Rosalie's voice was small. I did not know if you would come. I almost did not. I understand. Rosalie clutched her parasol like a shield. I know I do not deserve— No, you do not deserve anything from me. Emma's voice was firm, but not cruel. You sent me here like I was a package to be delivered. You wrote to my husband trying to take my place. You thought your face could win you anything you wanted. Rosalie flinched. Tears welled in her eyes. But you are my sister, and I know what it feels like to have nowhere to go. Emma took a step forward. Ruth Callahan is expecting you. She is hard and she is mean and she will work you until your hands bleed. But if you do what she says, if you learn to be useful, she will give you a home, a real one. Not because you are pretty, but because you earned it. I do not know if I can. You do not know anything yet. That is the point. Emma's expression softened. But you can learn. Anyone can learn if they are willing to be uncomfortable long enough. Rosalie looked at her sister, really looked maybe for the first time, saw the calloused hands and the sun-weathered face and the straight spine of a woman who had survived everything life had thrown at her. You became someone, Rosalie whispered. Out here. You became someone real. I was always someone real. You just never bothered to see it. The words landed hard, but they were true, and both sisters knew it. Will you teach me, Rosalie asked, how to be like you? No, I will teach you how to be like yourself, the real yourself, the one underneath all the pretty dresses and practiced smiles. Emma held out her hand. But you have to want it. You have to choose it. No one can do that for you. Rosalie looked at the offered hand, looked at the sister she had dismissed and discarded and underestimated, and for the first time in her life she made a choice that was not about what she could get. She took Emma's hand. Teach me," she said. "Please." Emma drove Rosalie to Ruth's place that afternoon. The older woman came out to meet them with her arms crossed and her expression as welcoming as a January wind. "So this is the pretty one," Ruth said, "the one who thought she could smile her way through life." Rosalie opened her mouth to respond, but Ruth held up a hand. "Save it. I do not care what you were. I only care what you are willing to become." She looked Rosalie up and down. "Those hands have never done a day's work. That dress would not last an hour in my kitchen, and that parasol is the most useless object I have ever seen. I can learn. Everyone says that. Most people quit before breakfast. I will not quit." Ruth's eyes narrowed. Something shifted in her expression, a glimmer of interest beneath the skepticism. "We will see. Get inside. There is a pump out back that needs priming and a floor that needs scrubbing. You can start proving yourself right now." Rosalie looked back at Emma, fear and determination warring on her face. "Remember what I told you," Emma said. "Be uncomfortable. Learn anyway." Rosalie nodded. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked into Ruth's cabin without looking back. Emma watched her go. Then she climbed back into the wagon and headed home. Silas was waiting on the porch when she arrived, the way he always waited now, watching for her return like she was something precious that might disappear if he looked away too long. "How did it go?" he asked. "Ruth is going to break her. And then maybe something new will grow in the wreckage." Silas put his arm around her as they walked inside. "You sound like Ruth. I will take that as a compliment." That night they sat by the fire as the autumn wind howled outside. Emma leaned against Silas's shoulder, his hand resting on her stomach where their child grew. "Tell me again," she said. "Tell you what? Why you chose me? Why you burned Rosalie's letter? Why you stayed?" Silas was quiet for a moment, watching the flames. "When I wrote those advertisements, I was looking for someone who could survive this life. Someone strong enough to handle the work and the solitude and the hard winters. I thought that was all I needed. And then you sat on a trunk in the sun for 10 minutes thinking I had abandoned you, and you did not cry. And I realized I was not looking for someone who could survive. I was looking for someone who could make me want to survive." Emma turned to look at him. The firelight played across his scarred face, softening the hard angles. "I love you," she said. "I know. Say it back." "I love you." He pulled her closer. "I love your stubbornness and your biscuits and the way you tamed that damn horse. I love that you fight for things. I love that you stayed. I will always stay. I know." He kissed the top of her head. "That is why I love you." Outside, the wind carried the first hints of winter down from the mountains. But inside the cabin beside the fire, there was only warmth. Months passed. Rosalie learned to work, learned to cook and clean and mend fences. Her hands grew calloused and her face grew tan, and the pretty dresses gave way to practical cotton. Ruth pushed her hard but fairly. And slowly something new began to emerge. Not the beautiful, useless girl who had broken hearts without consequence. Something better. Someone real. Emma's belly grew round with child. Silas built a cradle with his own hands, every piece carved and sanded until it was smooth as silk. Harlan Voss hanged on a cold November morning. The federal marshal sent word that justice had been served, that the territory was safer, that Emma's courage had made a difference. She read the letter and set it aside. Justice mattered, but it was not what mattered most. What mattered most was here. This cabin, this land, this man who chose her every day. The baby came in January during a blizzard that buried the ranch in 3 feet of snow. Ruth delivered her with Rosalie assisting while Silas paced in the kitchen like a caged animal. A girl, perfect and pink and screaming with life. They named her Grace. When Silas held his daughter for the first time, something cracked open in him that had been locked away for 30 years. All the pain of Gettysburg, all the loneliness of the years that followed, all the walls he had built to keep the world out. It all fell away, and in its place was something new, something he had never thought he would have, a family. Wyatt rode up the day after the birth, his face split with a grin so wide it looked painful. Beside him on a pretty roan mare sat a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. "This is Catherine," Wyatt said, helping her down from the saddle. "From Denver. We married last month." Emma saw the way Catherine looked at Wyatt, the way he kept one hand on her back, protective and proud, the way his grin had lost its edge of longing and found something steadier instead. "She is beautiful," Emma said. "She is everything," Wyatt replied. And for the first time he looked at Emma without a trace of what might have been. Just friendship, just warmth. Catherine brought a blanket she had sewn herself, soft blue wool with white stars stitched along the edges. "For the baby," she said. "Wyatt told me about you, about everything you did. I wanted to meet the woman who tamed the untamable." "The horse or the man?" Emma asked. Catherine laughed. "Both." That afternoon, something else happened that no one expected. Silas walked into the corral where Phantom stood, and the white stallion did not flinch, did not rear, did not bare his teeth. He walked to Silas and stood still. Silas put his hand on the horse's neck. Phantom turned his head and breathed warm air against the man's shoulder. "I will be damned," Ruth muttered from the fence. Silas looked at Emma standing on the porch with Grace in her arms. "He let me touch him," Silas said. His voice was rough with wonder. "He learned it from watching me," Emma replied. "Some of us just need someone to show up and stay. Then we learn to trust." Phantom nickered softly, and Silas smiled. Spring came late that year, but it came. The snow melted, and the creek ran high, and the first wildflowers pushed up through the mud. Emma stood on the porch with Grace in her arms, watching Silas work in the corral. Phantom stood nearby, calm and steady, nothing like the wild creature who had tried to kill anyone who came close. Ruth had taken Rosalie into town for supplies. The younger sister had changed so much in the past months that sometimes Emma barely recognized her. The vanity was gone, replaced by something harder and more genuine. She would never be Emma, but she was becoming herself, and that was enough. "Mrs. Blackwood?" Emma turned. Silas stood at the bottom of the porch steps, his hat in his hands, looking at her with an expression she had come to know well. Love. Simple and total and unconditional. "Mr. Blackwood, I have something to say to you." "Then say it." 3 years ago I wrote an advertisement looking for a wife. I described what I thought I needed. Someone strong, someone honest, someone who would not break. I thought I was being practical. He climbed the steps and stood beside her, looking out at the land they had built together. But I was not being practical. I was being afraid. Afraid that if I asked for too much I would get nothing. Afraid that no one could love a broken man with nightmares and scars and too much silence. "Silas, let me finish." He took her free hand. "I did not ask for someone who could tame a wild horse with patience and presence. I did not ask for someone who could face down killers and refuse to break. I did not ask for someone who could look at a man's worst secrets and love him anyway." His voice cracked. "I did not ask for you. But you came anyway. And you gave me everything I was too afraid to want." Emma leaned into him, their daughter between them, their life spreading out around them like the land itself. "I love you," she said. "I love you. I will love you until the mountains fall and the rivers run dry. I will love you in this life and whatever comes after." "That is a lot of words for you." "I have been practicing." She laughed, and he smiled, and Grace cooed in her blankets. And somewhere on the ridge above the ranch, Phantom raised his head to the wind and screamed, not with fear, but with something that sounded almost like joy. This is how it ends, not with $30 and a crumpled piece of paper, but with a family, a home, and a love that no one expected and no one could take away. Emma Thornton came to Wyoming as a substitute, a replacement, a woman no one wanted, sent to honor a promise her sister had broken. She left as Emma Blackwood, wife, mother, the woman who tamed the untamable horse and faced down the men who wanted her dead and taught a broken soldier how to hope again. Not second choice, not a substitute, not plain invisible Emma who existed in her sister's shadow. First chosen, fully loved, finally home. And here is the lesson worth remembering. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show up when no one expects you to. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay when everyone would understand if you left. And sometimes love finds you not because you went looking for it, but because you stopped running long enough to let it catch up. Emma stopped running on a dusty platform in Wyoming with nowhere to go and no one waiting for her. And everything she had ever wanted was waiting there too. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of something you had forgotten or someone you used to be, take a moment to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting on their own trunk in their own sun thinking they have been abandoned. And maybe, just maybe, the wagon is coming. They just need to wait a little longer.